The small orphanage sat quietly at the edge of town, surrounded by a few old trees that swayed gently in the winter wind. It was the kind of place people passed without thinking much about it. Its walls were a little worn, and the paint was chipped in places, but inside, it held warmth that came from the people who lived there and the ones who cared for it. The caretaker, a kind and patient woman, had devoted her life to the children. She had never married, never had a family of her own, but somehow in this modest building she had created a family. The children loved her, though they often acted out, tested boundaries, and demanded attention. She met them all with the same gentle patience. With a smile that never seemed to fade even on the hardest days, Christmas was approaching. And the orphanage, like every year, was full of excitement, tinged with worry. The children loved the holiday, even though they did not have much to celebrate. They would make handmade decorations from scraps of paper and string, and they would sing carols in their small hall, voices overlapping in joyous chaos. But behind the laughter, the caretaker and her few helpers worried about the gifts. The food and weather this year, like every other, they would barely make it through. Money was always tight. Sometimes the rent for the orphanage seemed impossible to pay, and heating for the children's rooms was an afterthought. They had always relied on small donations from the town, but those were never enough to make Christmas special. One frosty evening, as the children were finishing their dinner, the caretaker stepped outside to sweep the steps. Her breath formed clouds in the cold night air. That's when she noticed something she had never expected. There, placed neatly at the door, was an envelope. It looked ordinary at first glance, but as she picked it up, she realized it was unusually heavy. With trembling hands, she opened it and could hardly believe her eyes. Inside was a check for $10,000. Her heart skipped a beat. $10,000. It was more money than the orphanage had ever seen in a single gift. She looked around, expecting to see someone hiding, laughing at her surprise, but the street was empty. The snow had been falling lightly, covering the ground in a soft white layer, and the streetlights cast a warm glow, but there was no one in sight. She hurried inside to show the others. The children gathered around as she carefully unfolded the check. Their eyes widened, some with confusion, some with disbelief. One little girl whispered, "Is it real?" The caretaker nodded, her own voice catching with emotion. "It's real," she said. "Someone has given this to us. Someone who wants to help." That night the children could hardly sleep. They whispered in corners, their imaginations running wild. Who could have left the money? A wealthy neighbor? A secret admirer? A Christmas angel? The caretaker, though equally curious, did not press the question. She knew it was better to let the mystery remain for now and focus on what the gift could do. The following days were a whirlwind. With the money, the orphanage could buy warm coats, new shoes, and extra blankets for the children. They could prepare a proper Christmas dinner with turkey, vegetables, and even a small cake. For the first time in years, the children felt the kind of excitement that most families felt during the holiday season. They hung decorations, wrapped gifts for one another, and counted down the days to Christmas Eve with wide eyes and eager hearts. The caretaker, however, remained thoughtful. She couldn't stop wondering about the person who had done this. Who would give such a gift to children they had never met, asking nothing in return? She imagined many possibilities, each one more improbable than the last. She thought of former residents who had moved on, people who might have remembered the kindness they had received here as children. Or maybe it was someone who had seen the struggle the orphanage faced and decided to help quietly. Whoever it was, the gift had come with no name, no note, no clue about who they were. Christmas Eve arrived, and the orphanage was alive with excitement. The children put on their little sweaters and hats, their cheeks pink from the cold, and waited for the evening celebration. They sang songs, played small games, and told stories by the fireplace. The caretaker watched them with a mixture of joy and sadness, wishing she could protect them from all the hardships the world had in store. Later that night, when the children were finally asleep, the caretaker returned to the door to check the envelope once more. She found nothing new, only the memory of the first surprise. She touched it gently as if the money itself held the warmth of whoever had given it. There was a feeling of connection, though she had never met the donor. It was a quiet, unspoken promise that someone, somewhere, cared about these children. The following morning, the children awoke to a Christmas they would never forget. The room was filled with gifts, each wrapped in bright paper and ribbons. There were toys, books, clothes, and treats for every child. Their laughter echoed through the halls, bouncing off the walls in a way that made the caretaker's heart swell. For a moment, all the worries and struggles melted away, replaced by joy, wonder, and a sense of being truly loved. Word of the mysterious gift spread slowly through the town. Neighbors came by to congratulate the caretaker and admire the children's happiness. Some whispered theories about the donor. Some smiled knowingly, as if they suspected the answer. The caretaker never revealed the source, keeping the mystery alive. She had learned that sometimes the wonder of giving was even greater when it remained unseen. As the years went by, that first envelope became the beginning of a tradition. The caretaker always left a small note in her diary each Christmas, recording the joy the children felt and the hope that the next year would bring the same miracle. The children grew up with stories of a secret benefactor who appeared like magic every Christmas, a figure they called the Christmas angel. They didn't know the angel's face, but they felt the love behind every gift, and it shaped the way they saw the world. Some years, the caretaker would arrive at the door early and see the envelope waiting, just like the first time. Sometimes it would be slightly different, tucked into a small box or hidden behind a plant, but the amount was always the same: $10,000. It became a part of their lives, a reminder that even in a world full of hardship, kindness could be found. The children grew curious as they got older. They asked questions, trying to imagine the person behind the gifts. Was it a man or a woman? Young or old? Rich or simply generous beyond measure? The caretaker would smile softly and shake her head, saying only that the angel wanted to remain a mystery. Sometimes, she said, the magic is in not knowing, in believing that there is good in the world even when it is hidden. Through the years, the gifts transformed the orphanage in ways that went far beyond money. The children felt hope, learned the value of kindness, and understood that someone cared about them deeply. The walls of the orphanage seemed brighter, the rooms warmer, and the halls echoing with laughter more often. It wasn't just the toys or the food. It was the feeling of being seen, of being remembered, of being loved without condition. And so, the first part of the story ended quietly. With the snow falling gently outside the orphanage, the children asleep in their beds, and the caretaker standing at the window, gazing out at the street. Somewhere out there, the mysterious benefactor had done something extraordinary, something that would echo through the lives of these children for years to come. The mystery remained, but so did the magic, and for the children, that was enough. The story of the first Christmas gift was only the beginning. It was the spark that would grow into a tradition of hope, generosity, and the quiet power of giving without expectation. And though no one knew the face behind the envelope, everyone at the orphanage felt the warmth of a love that had traveled through time and distance to touch their lives in the most unforgettable way. The years passed quietly at the orphanage, each one carrying the same mixture of hope and uncertainty. Winter came and went, children grew older, and the small buildings seemed to breathe with the life of those who called it home. Yet every December, there was a special kind of excitement that made the cold weather feel warmer, the short days brighter, and the long nights somehow shorter. The children knew, even if they didn't understand why, that Christmas at the orphanage was different from anywhere else. It had a magic that no one could explain. It started the second year after the first gift appeared. The children had grown curious, still talking about the Christmas angel who had brought $10,000 the year before. They whispered in corners, imagining who it might be. Some thought it was a rich neighbor who wanted to remain anonymous. Others believed it was a fairy tale come to life, a magical being who only appeared at night. The caretaker listened to these stories with a quiet smile. She knew it didn't matter who gave the money. What mattered was the hope it brought. On the morning of the second Christmas Eve, the caretaker stepped outside, her boots crunching in the fresh snow. She nearly stopped in her tracks when she saw the familiar envelope waiting at the door. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be true? After all, it was just 1 year later, and yet the pattern seemed to be forming. She picked up the envelope carefully, feeling its weight, and hurried inside to show the children. The children gathered around, eyes wide with excitement. Some of the younger ones didn't fully understand the significance, but the older children did. They remembered last year's gifts, the warmth of new clothes, taste of a proper Christmas dinner, and the joy of toys that they had only dreamed of. They crowded around the caretaker, asking questions, speculating on who the mysterious benefactor could be. Once again, the money was spent wisely. The caretaker made a list of what the children needed most: warm coats, blankets, shoes, books, and some small luxuries, like chocolates and candies. For the children, it was a Christmas filled with wonder. They sang carols, decorated the halls, and played games by the fireplace. They felt loved, seen, and valued, even if they did not know the face behind it all. Over the next few years, this pattern continued. Every Christmas Eve, the same amount appeared at the door. $10,000, always carefully placed, always perfectly timed. The caretaker began to notice subtle changes. Each year, the children's excitement grew, but so did their curiosity. They began leaving small notes by the envelope, tiny messages of thanks written in childish handwriting. Sometimes the notes were simple: "Thank you for helping us." Other times, they were more elaborate: drawings of hearts, snowflakes, or little angels. The caretaker would tuck these notes into her diary, keeping them safe as a record of the years of kindness. The children started giving the mysterious benefactor a name of their own: the Christmas angel. They imagined the angel watching over them, a kind and gentle figure who only wanted to see them happy. Some swore they could see a shadow outside the window on Christmas Eve, moving silently and disappearing before they could call out. Others imagined the angel leaving gifts from far away, traveling through snow and night, driven only by love. The orphanage began to change in small but meaningful ways. With the money, the caretaker could afford repairs to the building, a fresh coat of paint, new beds, better heating, and even a small playground for the children. Each year, the place felt more like a home and less like a shelter. The children noticed the difference, though they did not fully understand the effort behind it. They only knew that Christmas was now something they could truly look forward to, a time of happiness, gifts, and warmth. Despite the growing generosity, the identity of the donor remained a mystery. The caretaker installed cameras outside to ensure safety, but the footage was always vague. A shadow, a figure hurrying away, but nothing clear enough to reveal a face. The children tried to catch a glimpse, hiding by windows, peeking through doors. But each time the figure vanished before they could see more than a fleeting shadow. It became part of the legend. The angel was real, but invisible. As the years passed, the children grew older, and some began to leave the orphanage. Yet even as they moved on, the story of the Christmas angels stayed with them. They would come back during the holidays, helping decorate, playing with the younger children, joining in the celebrations. They shared stories of the mysterious benefactor, passing along the wonder and the hope to those who had not yet experienced it. The caretaker often reflected on this, marveling at how a single act of kindness could ripple through so many lives. The town itself began to notice the changes at the orphanage. Neighbors commented on how cheerful the children seemed, how well cared for the building had become, and how the place seemed to glow with life each December. Some offered to help, inspired by the generosity they assumed had come from someone wealthy and kind. The community slowly became involved, though no one ever knew who had started the tradition. It was as if the Christmas angel had sparked a movement of quiet giving that went beyond the walls of the orphanage. There were times when the caretaker felt a pang of worry. What if the gift stopped? What if the angel no longer came? But every year, without fail, the envelope appeared. It was as if someone had made a promise and kept it, year after year, without seeking recognition or thanks. This consistency created a deep sense of trust, a belief that even in a world that often felt harsh and uncertain, there were still acts of pure kindness. One particular year, the caretaker decided to try something different. She left a small camera outside, hoping to capture even the slightest clue. The footage that night showed only a shadow moving quickly across the steps, nothing more. Yet the camera itself became a symbol of hope. The children crowded around the small screen the next morning, replaying the blurry figure, imagining who it could be. The caretaker smiled at their excitement, knowing that even if they never saw the angel's face, the feeling of being cared for was what truly mattered. The children began to write letters, not for the angel, but about the angel. They described what it meant to them, how it made them feel safe, happy, and loved. Some letters were funny, some were heartfelt, but all were filled with genuine emotion. The caretaker collected these letters, storing them carefully. She imagined one day showing them to the angel, hoping that whoever it was would know the impact of their quiet generosity. By the 10th year, the orphanage had transformed in ways that were impossible to measure in dollars alone. The building was warm and bright, the children were healthier and happier, and the community around them had begun to change. The magic of Christmas was no longer just a hope. It had become a reality, built year after year by someone who believed in the power of giving without recognition. The story of the Christmas angel was told and retold within the walls of the orphanage. Each child added their own details, their own imaginings of who the angel might be and why they cared so much. Yet through all the wonder and speculation, one truth remained clear. The angel's gifts had changed lives. The children learned the value of kindness, the importance of hope, and the joy that comes from receiving love without strings attached. The caretaker often watched the children play, her heart full of gratitude and awe. She thought about how one person's quiet, consistent generosity could touch so many lives over time. She marveled at how much hope could be built from a single envelope left at a door, year after year. It was a lesson she carried with her every day, a reminder that small acts of kindness, repeated with care and love, could create a ripple that extended far beyond what anyone could see. And so, the second part of the story ends with the orphanage quiet again on a snowy night. The children are asleep in their warm beds, dreaming of Christmas joy and the mysterious angel who watches over them. The caretaker stands at the window, gazing out at the street, reflecting on the years gone by. Somewhere out there, the angel has done something extraordinary once again, leaving behind not just money, but hope, love, and the knowledge that someone believes in the goodness of the world. This is the story of the second year, the continuation of a tradition that would last for many more. It is a story of patience, generosity, and quiet magic, reminding everyone who hears it that even unseen acts of kindness have the power to transform lives, to create joy where there was struggle, and to show that love, in its purest form, can be felt even when the giver remains a mystery. By the time the orphanage reached its third year of receiving the mysterious Christmas gift, the children had grown used to the wonder that appeared at their doorstep. Yet each year, their excitement never faded. Every December, whispers of the Christmas angel filled the halls, and the anticipation of a surprise kept the children awake at night, their minds spinning with possibilities. They imagined the angel as someone kind, with a gentle smile and warm eyes, moving silently through the snow to bring joy to those who needed it most. The caretaker, now more familiar with the pattern, had grown both grateful and curious. She loved the generosity, but she also wondered who the person might be. It was not just the money; they had learned to use it wisely, but the thought behind it. Someone had been quietly observing the orphanage, caring enough to plan a surprise that would help year after year. She often wondered what had inspired such dedication. Was it someone who had once lived in the orphanage? Someone who had experienced loss? Or simply a person who believed in doing good without recognition? That year, as Christmas approached, the caretaker decided to do something different. She prepared the children for a small experiment. She explained that they would leave little signs, subtle clues, and notes by the envelope to see if the angel noticed. Some of the children were skeptical, but most were thrilled at the idea. They wrote letters, drew pictures, and even left tiny gifts, a small candy, a handmade ornament, hoping the mysterious benefactor would understand their gratitude. On the night before Christmas Eve, the caretaker walked to the door and placed the notes and tiny gifts beside the familiar envelope. Snow fell softly, dusting the path in white, and the wind carried a quiet stillness. She watched the children from the window, their faces glowing with hope and curiosity. She felt a mix of anticipation and worry. What if the angel did not notice this year? What if the pattern ended? She pushed the thought aside, trusting that the magic would continue. In the early hours of the morning, the caretaker heard the soft crunch of footsteps outside. She hurried to the window but saw nothing beyond a shadow moving in the distance. When she opened the door later, the envelope was gone and the notes were slightly rearranged. It was a small, subtle sign, but it filled the caretaker with a deep sense of awe. Someone had interacted with their message. Someone had noticed the effort. And it was clear that the angel was real and aware. The children were ecstatic the next morning. They gathered around examining the envelope, laughed with delight when they saw that their small notes and gifts had been subtly acknowledged. The excitement was contagious. That year, the money was used to repair the roof of the orphanage, buy new mattresses, and provide a small library of books for the children. For the first time, some children were able to choose their own gifts, a simple luxury that meant the world to them as the years went by. The children grew older, and the orphanage became more like a home. The Christmas gifts remained a constant, a thread of hope woven through their lives. Yet with each passing year, the caretaker began to notice small details that made her wonder about the person behind the generosity. The envelope was always left at exactly the same spot at roughly the same time. Sometimes a shadow would appear in the footage from the cameras she had installed. And though it was always vague, there were moments when she thought she could see a distinctive coat or perhaps a walking stick. Moving quickly before vanishing into the night, she began to piece together small patterns. The person was careful, methodical, and clearly had observed the orphanage for some time. There was a rhythm to their visits, a sense of planning and intention that spoke of someone with a personal connection to the place. She shared her observations quietly with the children, who listened intently, their imaginations running wild. They speculated endlessly. Some thought the angel might have been a former orphan who had grown up and wanted to give back. Others imagined a wealthy townsperson who had noticed the struggles of the children, decided to help anonymously. One quiet evening, as the caretaker sat in the small office at the back of the orphanage, she pulled out the old notes the children had left by the envelope in previous years. Each one told a story, revealed a hope, or expressed a dream. Some were written in careful handwriting, others in messy scrawls, but each one was filled with sincerity and emotion. She read them slowly, imagining the person who had been touched by these messages. The person who had taken the time to acknowledge their gratitude. A warmth spread through her chest. Whoever the angel was, they had already made a difference that no one could measure. That year, the orphanage decided to create a small tradition. They began leaving a simple thank you card beside the envelope, expressing their gratitude and sharing stories of the children's lives over the past year. It was a way to connect with the mystery, a way to honor the generosity that had changed so much. When the envelope disappeared the next morning, the caretaker noticed that the card had been moved slightly, as if the angel had read it. The children were thrilled, their excitement renewed. And a new layer of wonder and connection was added to the story. The impact of the angel's gifts extended far beyond the walls of the orphanage. Families in the town began to notice the changes in the children. They were healthier, happier, and more confident. Some of the older children began to excel in school, their curiosity and love of learning nurtured by the small library and resources the angel had helped provide. Teachers commented on their growth, not realizing that a quiet benefactor had made such a profound difference in their lives. The caretaker began to reflect on the deeper meaning of the gifts. It was not just money or toys that mattered, but the sense of being cared for, of being seen, and of knowing that someone believed in them. The children learned lessons that went beyond material generosity. They learned about hope, patience, and the quiet power of giving without expecting anything in return. They learned that acts of kindness could ripple outward, touching lives in ways that were not always immediately visible. Despite the growing familiarity with the pattern, the identity of the angel remained a mystery. The caretaker occasionally shared her thoughts with close friends in the community, wondering aloud about who the person might be. Some suggested that it could be someone who had once lived in the orphanage, someone who wanted to repay the kindness they had received. Others thought it might be a member of the town who had been moved by the struggles of the children and wanted to remain anonymous. No one could say for sure. Perhaps that was how it was meant to be. The children themselves began to leave small gifts outside, hoping to show their appreciation in the only way they knew how. They would make drawings, fold paper stars, or leave tiny handmade ornaments. Some of these gifts would remain untouched, while others would be subtly rearranged. A quiet sign that the angel had noticed. It became a part of the magic, a silent conversation between giver and receiver, built on trust and hope. Over time, the caretaker realized that the mystery itself was a gift. It inspired imagination, joy, and wonder. The children did not just wait for Christmas to receive. They waited to imagine, to dream, and to connect with the unseen. The magic of the angel's presence was felt even in the smallest moments. A shared laugh, a warm meal, a bedtime story. The impact was deep, lasting, and immeasurable. By the 5th year, the caretaker began to notice another pattern. The angel's visits were always deliberate and quiet. But there were subtle hints that the person had a history, perhaps even a personal connection to the orphanage. Small clues in the way the envelope was placed, the care taken in timing, and the way notes were acknowledged suggested someone who remembered the orphanage from long ago. The caretakers shared these thoughts with the older children, who were fascinated by the idea. They began imagining stories of the angel's life, weaving together past and present, curiosity and hope, into a tapestry of wonder. The children's connection to the angel deepened. They no longer just hoped for gifts. They felt a sense of relationship, of understanding that someone far away cared deeply about their lives. They began to talk about the angel in their daily activities, sharing lessons learned from the generosity and kindness they received. Respect, empathy, and compassion became more than words. They became part of the way they treated one another. As Christmas Eve approached each year, the anticipation grew. The caretaker and the staff prepared decorations, meals, and small surprises. But the heart of the celebration remained the same. The arrival of the mysterious envelope and the joy it brought. Even children who had experienced hardship, sadness, or loss felt a sense of belonging and love that could not be measured. It was a quiet, powerful magic that transformed not just the orphanage, but the children themselves. The years of gifts, notes, and tiny acknowledgments had created something extraordinary, a cycle of hope, trust, and love that strengthened with each passing Christmas. The caretaker often reflected on the journey, marveling at how one act of kindness could grow into something so much larger than anyone could have imagined. It was a lesson in patience, in faith, and in the quiet power of doing good without expecting recognition. And so, as another Christmas approached, the children prepared their notes, their letters, and their small gifts. The caretaker watched with a sense of quiet pride, knowing that the magic of the angel was not just in the envelope, but in the hearts it had touched, the lives it had changed, and the hope it had inspired. Somewhere the angel continued to watch, to care and to give, never seeking attention, never asking for thanks, but leaving a legacy of love that would last far beyond a single Christmas. The third part of the story closes with the orphanage bathed in soft winter light. Children sleep peacefully, dreaming of kindness, joy, and the mysterious angel who watches over them. The caretaker stands at the window, reflecting on the years of gifts and the deep impact they have had on each child. The magic continues, subtle yet profound. And everyone within those walls knows that the spirit of giving can transform lives in ways that are quiet, unseen, and immeasurably powerful. By the time the orphanage reached its 4th year of receiving the mysterious Christmas gift, the tradition had become a part of the children's lives. It was no longer just a gift of money, it had become a symbol of hope, trust, and kindness that everyone at the orphanage cherished deeply. Each child, from the youngest to the oldest, felt the magic of the Christmas angel in their hearts. Yet, as much as they had come to expect the gift, there was a growing curiosity about who might be behind it. The caretaker, too, felt this curiosity more strongly with each passing year. The preparations for Christmas began weeks in advance. The children decorated the halls with paper chains, hand-drawn stars, and small ornaments crafted from scraps. The caretaker and her few helpers prepared the rooms, the tables, and the fireplace for the celebration. But the excitement always centered around the mysterious envelope. No one knew when it would appear exactly, and that uncertainty only added to the magic. That year, the caretaker decided to take a new approach. She installed a higher-resolution camera near the front door. The previous cameras had only captured vague shadows, but she wanted to see even the smallest details, hoping to gather a clue without disturbing the tradition. She explained it to the children as a way to celebrate the angel, not to spy or intrude. The children were thrilled at the idea, their eyes wide with anticipation. They imagined seeing the angel, even if just for a fleeting moment, on Christmas Eve. The air was crisp, the snow glistening under the streetlights. The children went to bed earlier than usual, unable to contain their excitement. They whispered under blankets, imagining the angel moving silently through the snow, placing the envelope and disappearing before anyone could notice. The caretaker watched over them, feeling a mixture of hope and nervousness. She wondered if the angel would come as always, or if something would change this year. Around midnight, a quiet sound reached the caretaker's ears, the soft crunch of footsteps on snow. She moved to the window and saw a figure approaching, moving carefully and deliberately. The figure paused at the steps, leaving a familiar envelope in place. But this time, something was different. The caretaker noticed a faint glimmer of light reflecting off a walking stick, and the coat appeared familiar, as if it had been chosen with care. The figure moved slowly, with a deliberate grace, then vanished into the darkness. The next morning, children rushed to the door, their faces lighting up as they saw the envelope had arrived. They squealed with delight, examining the gifts inside, but their eyes were drawn to the subtle changes from previous years. The envelope had been placed slightly differently. The notes and tiny gifts they had left were gently rearranged, as if someone had touched them with care. The caretaker felt a thrill of recognition. This was someone who truly cared. Someone who was not just generous, but thoughtful in every gesture throughout the day. The caretaker and the children marveled at the changes. The gifts were more than just money. They were a lifeline, a way to improve the orphanage in ways that mattered deeply. That year, they used the funds to repair the floors, install new windows, and provide a small garden where the children could grow vegetables. The magic of the Christmas angel was not just in the envelope, but in the way the gifts transformed their daily lives. The caretaker spent the evening reviewing the new camera footage. Unlike previous years, this time the image was clearer. She could make out the shape of the coat, the walking stick, and even the careful movements of the figure as they approached the door. She paused the footage, watching closely, trying to glean any detail that might reveal the identity of the donor. The children gathered around, peering at the screen with wide eyes. They whispered excitedly, imagining stories about who the angel might be, each idea more fantastic than the last. The weeks following that Christmas were filled with reflection. The caretaker noted down her observations in her diary, recording the patterns she had seen over the past 4 years. She noticed that the angel seemed deliberate, careful, and deeply connected to the orphanage in ways that were not immediately obvious. The envelope was always placed at the same spot, but the subtle variations suggested a personal touch, a sense of ritual that carried meaning beyond the gift itself. The children, inspired by the mystery, began to think about the angel in new ways. They imagined the angel as someone who had once experienced hardship, someone who understood what it meant to feel alone or forgotten. They wrote stories, poems, and letters, expressing gratitude and wonder. Some of the older children even began to imagine what they might do if they could one day repay the kindness. A lesson in generosity that went beyond receiving. As the years continued, the caretaker noticed another pattern. The angel never came during the day, never sought attention, and never left a note explaining their presence. Yet there was a consistency in timing, a rhythm to the visits that suggested someone who cared deeply about maintaining the tradition. It was clear that the angel's actions were deliberate, not impulsive. They were a person who thought carefully about how to make a difference. someone who valued the impact of their actions more than recognition. One winter evening, the caretaker shared her observations with the children. They sat huddled together by the fireplace, listening intently. She explained that the angel seemed to be someone who had a deep connection to the orphanage, is someone who remembered it from long ago. The children's imaginations ran wild, each proposing theories about who it could be. Some suggested a former resident who had grown up and wanted to give back. Others imagined a kind-hearted neighbor who had noticed their struggles. The caretaker smiled, encouraging their creativity, but kept the true identity a mystery. The anticipation of Christmas grew each year, not just because of the gifts, but because of the connection it represented. The children felt seen, loved, and cared for in a way they had never experienced before. The gifts became more than just material items. They were symbols of hope, trust, and the belief that someone, somewhere, cared enough to make a difference. By the 5th year, the caretaker had become more confident in her observations. She noticed small details in the way the envelope was placed. The careful acknowledgement of the notes left by the children and the deliberate timing of the visits. She began to feel that the angel was someone who had a personal story connected to the orphanage, someone who had once been part of its world and now wanted to give back in a quiet, meaningful way. The children continued to leave small notes and handmade gifts by the envelope. They drew pictures, wrote letters, and crafted tiny ornaments, hoping to show their gratitude. Each year, the angel seemed to respond subtly, acknowledging their efforts without breaking the mystery. It became a silent conversation between giver and receiver, built on trust, imagination, and hope. The caretaker also began to notice the impact on the children's daily lives. They were kinder to one another, more patient, and more empathetic. They learned that giving and receiving kindness were connected and that even small acts could have a powerful effect. The angel's presence, though unseen, was shaping not just the orphanage's Christmases, but the character and values of the children themselves. As another Christmas approached, the caretaker prepared for the arrival of the envelope with a sense of wonder and anticipation. The children helped decorate, wrote their notes, and whispered about what the angel might think. They imagined the figure moving silently through the snow, leaving gifts with care and attention. The anticipation itself became part of the magic, a lesson in hope and belief that carried them through the cold winter nights. When the envelope arrived that night, the caretaker and the children were not disappointed. The gifts were as generous as ever, and the subtle acknowledgement of the notes left by the children brought tears to the caretaker's eyes. She realized that the angel had become more than a mystery. They had become a presence in the lives of the children. It's a symbol of love, hope, and the power of quiet generosity. The 4th part of the story ends with the caretaker watching the children as they opened their gifts. Laughter and joy filling the halls. Outside, the snow continued to fall, and the world seemed to hold its breath, as if in reverence for the kindness that had taken root in this small orphanage. The angel, unseen yet deeply felt, had once again touched lives. Leaving a legacy of hope that would continue to grow with each passing year, the story was now moving toward a revelation. The caretaker's observations, the subtle clues, and the children's imaginative notes had begun to paint a clearer picture of the angel. Somewhere out there, the mysterious donor was real, deliberate, and deeply connected to the orphanage. And though no one knew the face behind the generosity, the impact was undeniable, a transformation not just of the orphanage, but of hearts, dreams, and the belief in goodness that could endure even in the coldest winter. The 10th Christmas had arrived, and the orphanage was alive with the familiar energy of excitement, hope, and curiosity. Over the past 9 years, the children had come to know the magic of the mysterious gifts, and each year had built on the last. The tradition of the Christmas angel had become an unspoken part of their lives. They knew the gifts would come, but no one had ever seen the giver. The caretaker had long suspected that there was someone with a personal connection to the orphanage behind the envelopes, but the identity remained a secret until now. This year, the caretaker decided it was time to try one final step. She had been documenting patterns, notes, and the subtle clues left by the mysterious figure for years. The previous cameras had shown shadows and vague shapes, but she had recently installed a high-definition CCTV system. She wanted to capture the figure clearly, not to intrude, but to finally give the children and herself a glimpse of the person whose quiet generosity had shaped so many lives. The children helped decorate the orphanage with their usual fervor, hanging paper stars, stringing lights, and arranging little handmade gifts around the room. The caretaker placed the notes and tiny presents by the front door once again, a tradition the children insisted on continuing. They believed that the angel deserved to know how much their actions mattered, even if they never saw them. Excitement buzzed through the air, but this year, it was tinged with anticipation of the possibility that they might finally see the face behind the mystery. As the night grew darker and the snow fell softly outside, the children went to bed, their heads filled with dreams of angels and magic. The caretaker stayed up, reviewing the camera one last time and making sure everything was in place. She felt a mixture of nervousness and hope. What if the figure did not appear this year? What if the tradition ended? Her heart ached at the thought, but she trusted that the magic would continue. Just past midnight, a faint sound reached her ears, the soft crunch of footsteps in the snow. She quickly moved to the camera screen, holding her breath. There, moving slowly and deliberately toward the front steps, was a figure she recognized instantly. Not by face, but by the way they moved, the careful, deliberate way the envelope was placed, the respect and care in each motion. The figure paused for a moment, glanced at the small notes and gifts, and gently rearranged them before leaving the envelope neatly in place. Then, as if melting into the darkness, the figure disappeared from view. The caretaker's heart raced. She replayed the footage over and over, each time noticing more details. The figure had a walking stick, a distinctive coat, and a careful posture that spoke of someone who had experienced much in life. The movement, deliberate yet gentle, suggested someone with a deep connection to the orphanage. She realized that all the patterns she had observed over the years, the timing, the placement, the attention to detail made perfect sense now. Morning came, and the children rushed to the door, their laughter and excitement filling the halls. They gathered around the envelope, carefully opening it to reveal the familiar gift. Their joy was immediate. But what caught their attention this year were the subtle signs that their notes had been acknowledged again. The children exchanged wide-eyed glances, whispering among themselves about the figure they had almost seen on the camera. The caretaker decided it was time to reveal the footage to the children. They crowded around the screen, leaning in as she pressed play. There, on the monitor, they saw the figure moving carefully through the snow. Though the face was still partially obscured, everyone could sense the kindness radiating from the person's gestures, the gentle placement of the envelope, the subtle acknowledgement of the notes and gifts left by the children. A hush fell over the room as the children watched, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Then something remarkable happened. The caretaker adjusted the camera angle and enhanced the footage slightly. Slowly, the figure became clearer. It was an older man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He moved deliberately, as if each step and gesture mattered deeply. The children gasped. There was a familiarity about him, though none of them could place it. The caretaker's heart swelled with emotion. She had suspected this all along. Someone with a personal history connected to the orphanage had been behind the gifts. Later that day, the door opened quietly, and the man appeared. The children froze, unsure of what to do. The caretaker stepped forward, a mixture of relief and emotion in her eyes. "You're here," she whispered. "We've waited so long to meet you." The man smiled softly, looking around at the children. "I've been here every year," he said gently. "I've watched you grow, and I wanted to give you something that could change your lives, even in small ways." He paused, his eyes misting. "I remember what it was like to be in this orphanage, to feel forgotten, to dream of warmth and kindness. I wanted you to feel the same hope I once longed for." The children approached slowly, curiosity and wonder written across their faces. Some reached out tentatively, others whispered questions, and a few simply stared, trying to absorb the reality of the angel they had imagined for so long. The caretaker watched quietly, tears streaming down her face, knowing that the mystery had finally been resolved. But the magic remained intact. the man continued, speaking softly but with conviction. "I wanted to give without being seen, without needing thanks. The joy you feel, the hope in your hearts, that is all I could ever ask for." He looked at each child in turn, as if imprinting the memory in his heart. "Every note, every picture, every small gift you left for me, I saw them. They reminded me why this mattered." The children began to understand. They realized that the angel had not only given them gifts, but had been a part of their lives in a quiet, invisible way, shaping their experiences and teaching them about kindness, gratitude, and hope. They hugged the caretaker, held hands, and whispered thanks to the man who had given so much without asking for anything in return. Over the next few days, the man spent time with the children, quietly helping with small projects, reading stories, and listening to their hopes and dreams. He did not seek recognition or praise, but his presence brought a sense of closure and joy that had been missing for years. The children felt a connection to someone who understood their world, someone who had once walked in their shoes and now wanted to give back. The caretaker reflected on the years of gifts, notes, and quiet generosity. She realized that the impact of the angel had gone far beyond the envelopes and money. The children had learned empathy, gratitude, and the importance of giving without expectation. The orphanage had become a place of warmth, growth, and hope, thanks to the quiet dedication of one person who had believed in the power of kindness. As Christmas approached again, the children prepared decorations, wrote letters, and made small gifts for the angel. But now, there was a new understanding. They knew that giving and receiving were connected. The magic of generosity was not just in the act itself, but in the way it shaped hearts and lives. They learned that even unseen acts of kindness could create ripples that extended far beyond what anyone could see. The man continued to visit the orphanage, though he remained humble and quiet. He encouraged the children to dream, to believe in goodness, and to carry the lessons of kindness with them into the world. The caretaker watched with pride as the children thrived, their lives filled with hope, joy, and the knowledge that someone cared deeply about them. Years later, the story of the Christmas angel became a legend within the town. People spoke of the mysterious benefactor who had quietly transformed the orphanage and the lives of countless children. But for those who lived inside the walls, the caretaker, the staff, and most importantly, the children, it was not a legend. It was a living, breathing reality. They had experienced the power of kindness firsthand, and it had shaped them in ways that would last a lifetime. The angel's generosity continued, but now it was coupled with personal interaction. The man helped the children understand the meaning of giving, the joy of helping others, and the quiet beauty of selfless acts. The children grew up carrying these lessons in their hearts, and some even returned to the orphanage as adults. Inspired to continue the legacy of the Christmas angel, the story concludes with a simple, powerful truth. One person's quiet, consistent generosity can change the lives of many. It can inspire hope, teach lessons of empathy and gratitude, and create a legacy that endures for generations. The children of the orphanage learned that magic exists in acts of kindness, that hope can be nurtured even in the darkest times, and that love, given without expectation, can leave a mark on the world that is impossible to erase. The man. The angel eventually became a symbol not just of Christmas generosity, but of the human capacity for compassion. His identity, once a mystery, became known to those whose lives he had touched most deeply. But for the rest of the world, he remained the quiet figure who had changed the world, one Christmas at a time, teaching that sometimes the most powerful magic is simply the love we give without asking for anything in return. And so, the orphanage thrived, the children grew, and the legacy of the Christmas angel continued, a testament to the enduring power of generosity, hope, and the belief that even unseen acts of kindness can transform lives forever.